Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Friedman, back in the studio today, and I'm joined by my next guest, Scott Deware, Scott of Deware Racing Group. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you very much.
And I must say this is a first for me, interviewing a president of a motorsports racing team and a NASCAR team as well.
I appreciate the opportunity. I've been involved in motorsports for many years. I live in the Boston area, grew up in Hingham, live in Easton now. But it is a little bit different because when people ask where my office is, I tell them it's in Mooresville, North Carolina, and it's quite a commute.
And so we talked a little bit before we came on the air about sort of the perception of motorsports and where that is in New England in particular, in the Northeast. And you corrected me in telling me that there is an enormous fan base, as I know NASCAR and motorsports in general has an enormous fan base across the country and internationally, of course. But tell us about your start and how it came to be that did you found the race group?
I did. I actually started motorsports when I was a teenager. I grew up in Hingham on the water and actually started boat racing. And at a young age had opportunities.
Power boats, I take it.
Power boats, yes, power boats. And I had an opportunity at a young age, met individuals who were involved in boat racing, circuit racing, which is very much like NASCAR on the water versus the offshore, the big offshore boats. Had an opportunity to go racing as a teenager. By the time I was 20 years old, I was a factory driver for one of the outboard manufacturers and had an opportunity to race in the U.S. and in Europe, while also going to college and assisting a family business. But had an opportunity to have some great experiences in powerboat racing. Didn't actually start in auto racing till I was almost 30. Started in sports cars and open wheel cars, the Indy type cars, and
so this was your own passion. You were a driver and a racer, and
driver for years. Raced in open wheel, raced in sports car racing. I've raced the 24 Hours of Daytona and 12 Hours of Sebring and those endurance car races, racing events. And also did a stint in what was called the NASCAR Busch North Series. Busch being Busch Beer was the sponsor. The Busch North Series for a number of years. Then I got old, and the phone stops ringing. And to stay in the sport, I started getting a different type of phone call. And the phone call I was getting had to do with team owners looking for sponsorship. Team owners, especially, that were looking for investment, looking to sell a portion of their team or sell their team outright. And I became, for a number of years, quite involved in mergers and acquisitions and investment of teams and motorsports properties.
Now, the perception, I think, shared by many is that to get involved in any professional sporting activity, notwithstanding a team, is a monumental undertaking from a financial perspective. It's big dollars. And it's fascinating to hear that these teams are changing hands, and it makes perfect sense. But is there a whole network, if you will, of investors that are involved in motorsports?
There is. Unfortunately, a few years ago, during the real big boom of NASCAR has gone through several stages of rises. And like in any sport, you have the growth stage, then you have a leveling off stage before you find your next growth stage, hopefully. And
as long as the peaks are larger each time,
as long
right?
as
You're
the peaks
are
all right, exactly. The leveling off stage you catch your breath. And during that the last major rise that was about 10 or 12 years ago, there were investors that were getting involved that didn't understand the sport and making what I would call maybe some misguided investments. We're seeing now where the sport again is encouraging new investment, but there is always a coming and going. You have certain team owners that are vested in the sport forever, the Hendricks, Richard Childress, Penske, people that their entire lives have been ingrained. But then you have people like John Henry, who partner in the Red Sox, or principal owner of the Red Sox, who is a partner with Jack Roush, one of the largest teams. A lot of people don't know that he's a very, very avid racer, online racer.
Okay.
Digital racer.
Oh, interesting.
But you go through those stages with investment, and it is like any company. it's a good investment. If you treat it as a hobby, it will reward you as a hobby, and it will cost you a lot of money. A lot of people look at motorsports as a hobby. It certainly is at many levels. At the level that we're talking about, at the top 2 or 3 levels of NASCAR, it's not a hobby. It is a business.
I would imagine there's a large infrastructure associated. Approximately, how many people, what kind of head count are we talking about at a bare minimum to run a race team?
If you look at the larger teams, you look at the Hendricks Motorsports, the Roush Racing, they'll have 500 or 600 employees.
So they're considerably sized businesses.
They're large.
These are not your mom and pops running out of a garage.
No, and they're some of the largest employers in their respective areas in and around. Most of the teams are based in and around the Charlotte area. It just happens to be the technology base.
Mm-hmm.
So most of your teams are in that area.